My billionaire CEO ex-husband chose a seat to upset me on a flight, but I landed to a Bentley waiting with twins he never knew existed. I know about the twins, Rachel. 5 words. 5 simple words that shattered the careful world I'd built over 3 years. I felt the blood drain from my face as I stared at my ex-husband across the first-class aisle, his steel-gray eyes holding mine with an intensity that had once made me feel like the center of his universe. "How dare you?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. "How dare you ambush me like this?" Dominic Blackwood, tech visionary, billionaire, and the man I'd once loved beyond reason, leaned closer, his $10,000 suit barely wrinkling as he moved. "They have my eyes, don't they? My mother's chin. Did you really think I'd never find out about my own children?" The flight attendant approached with champagne, oblivious to the bomb that had just detonated in my carefully constructed life. In 6 hours, we would land in Singapore, where my 3-year-old twins waited with their nanny. Twins their father had never known existed. Until now. Have you ever had a secret so precious, so vital to protect, that you'd risk everything to keep it? This is the story of a woman who walked away from a billion-dollar life to protect her children from becoming mere assets in a powerful man's empire, and the unexpected journey that began when that man discovered the truth. Hi, my beautiful sisters. Sometimes the hardest choices we make aren't about what's easy, but about protecting those we love most. Your worth isn't measured by the relationship you left behind, but by the courage it took to choose yourself and your children. Remember, walking away from something toxic doesn't make you a failure, it makes you brave. Your story isn't over. It's just beginning on your own terms. I'm Mr. Harrison, and today's story reminds us that sometimes the most painful silences hide the most powerful truths. If you've ever had to make an impossible choice to protect someone you love, hit that like button right now and let me know you're here. The first-class cabin of Singapore Airlines Flight 317 felt suddenly airless as I settled into my seat, acutely aware of Dominic's presence across the aisle. The champagne trembled slightly in my hand, betraying the calm I was desperately trying to project. 3 years of careful planning, of building a life oceans away from his influence, and now here he was, looking at me with those penetrating eyes that had once seen straight through every defense I'd ever built. "Singapore's a long way from your usual haunts," he remarked casually, as though we were old friends catching up. "New client." Something like that. I took a deliberate sip, unwilling to share more. What waited for me in Singapore was none of his business, at least it hadn't been until now. Dominic studied me with the intensity that had made him a legend in Silicon Valley, the focus that could dismantle complex problems and rebuild them into elegant solutions. "You look well, Rachel. Success suits you." It wasn't what I'd expected him to say. After our divorce, when I'd refused his settlement offer and rebuilt my architectural firm from scratch, he'd predicted I would come crawling back within a year. Instead, I'd thrived, my innovative sustainable designs earning international recognition, and complete independence from his influence and connections. "I am well," I replied simply. "And you?" "Still reshaping the tech landscape one startup at a time. Among other things." His gaze lingered on my face a moment too long. "I've been reevaluating priorities lately." The plane began its taxi down the runway, and I turned toward the window, using the moment to compose myself. 14 hours trapped in proximity to the man who had once promised me the world, then expected me to shrink myself to fit inside the narrow space he'd allocated for me in his empire. I closed my eyes, memories flooding back unbidden. 7 years ago, I was Rachel Maxwell, a promising young architect specializing in sustainable design, when Dominic Blackwood walked into a charity gala where my firm had donated a model of an eco-friendly community center. While others admired the design, Dominic asked questions no one else had thought to ask about thermal efficiency, about community integration, about the philosophy behind each choice. "Most people see buildings," he'd said, his eyes never leaving mine. "You see possibilities." 3 months later, we were inseparable. 6 months after that, I was wearing his ring. The whirlwind romance had felt like destiny, the brilliant tech innovator and the visionary architect, building a future together that would change the world. Reality had set in slowly, almost imperceptibly. First came the subtle suggestions about my career. Blackwood Foundation could use your expertise, he'd said. Why work for others when you could direct your own projects with us? The foundation position had seemed perfect initially, unlimited resources, freedom to choose projects with social impact. But gradually, I realized my role was being narrowed, my vision increasingly subject to Dominic's approval. My designs became our initiatives, presented to the world as evidence of Dominic Blackwood's philanthropic vision. I saw your Jakarta project in Architectural Digest, he continued now, interrupting my thoughts. The integration of traditional elements with cutting-edge sustainability was remarkable. I turned back, surprised by the genuine admiration in his voice. During our marriage, he'd viewed my architectural ambitions as charming but secondary, a hobby to occupy me while he built his legacy. Thank you, I said carefully. It was a challenging project. I imagined so. Balancing cultural preservation with forward-thinking design always was your specialty. He paused, something unreadable flickering across his features. You've accomplished exactly what you said you would. The acknowledgement hung between us as the plane lifted into the clouds. For a moment, I glimpsed the man I'd fallen in love with, before success had hardened him, before his vision for our future had eclipsed my own. Why are you here, Dominic? I asked finally. On this specific flight in that specific seat. Don't insult my intelligence by calling it coincidence. He set his tablet aside, giving me his full attention, a rarity even during our marriage. Would you believe me if I said I needed to see you? No. His laugh was unexpected, genuine. Fair enough. I've earned that skepticism. He leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice. The truth is, I received some information recently that made me reevaluate everything. I needed to see you before you landed in Singapore. My heart pounded so loudly I was certain he could hear it. What information? Not here, he said, glancing around the cabin. But I think you know what I'm referring to. I did know. Alexander and Amelia would be waiting at the gate with May, their nanny. The children Dominic never knew existed, conceived during our last attempt at reconciliation before the divorce was finalized. I had discovered my pregnancy 2 weeks after signing the papers, when Dominic was already deep into his next acquisition, his next conquest. After years of watching him measure everything and everyone by their utility to his vision, I had made the painful decision to keep my pregnancy secret. My children deserved to be more than pieces in his legacy plan, more than assets to be shaped and directed. Whatever you think you know, I began, but he interrupted with a gentle shake of his head. Not here, he repeated. But I want you to know that I understand why you did it. I didn't at first, but I do now. The quiet certainty in his voice unnerved me more than anger would have. This wasn't the Dominic I'd left behind, the man who viewed compromise as weakness, who believed his perspective was the only one that mattered. You understand nothing, I whispered fiercely. I understand that I gave you no choice, he replied, his voice equally low. I understand that I treated our marriage like another company to be managed, another success to be achieved rather than a partnership to be nurtured. I stared at him, searching for the manipulation beneath his words. Dominic Blackwood didn't admit mistakes. He reframed narratives until history aligned with his preferred version of events. What do you want? I asked finally. A chance. His gaze held mine steadily. Not to reclaim what we had. I know that's gone. But a chance to be better than I was. To know them. The flight attendant approached with dinner menus, forcing a pause in our conversation. I used the interruption to gather my thoughts, to fortify myself against the unexpected vulnerability in Dominic's expression. Have you ever had someone from your past reappear when you least expected it, saying all the things you once desperately needed to hear? Share your experience in the comments below. Sometimes the most difficult reunions teach us the most about ourselves and how far we've come. How did you find out? I asked when we were alone again. Does it matter? It matters to me. He nodded, accepting the boundary. A medical emergency. Alexander has a rare blood type, my blood type. When the hospital in Singapore ran his details through the international database, It flagged a genetic marker that's tracked in my family for research purposes. My heart clenched. 6 months ago, Alexander had needed an emergency transfusion after a playground accident. I'd never considered that the sophisticated medical systems might connect him to Dominic. "He's all right?" Dominic asked, genuine concern evident in his voice. "He's fine. It was a minor procedure in the end." "And Amelia?" The sound of my daughter's name on his lips sent a shiver through me. "Thriving. They both are." Dominic nodded, relief visible in the slight relaxation of his shoulders. "I haven't approached them. I wanted to speak with you first." Another surprise. The Dominic I'd known would have asserted his rights immediately, would have arrived with lawyers and demands rather than sitting quietly across an airplane aisle. "They don't know about you," I admitted. "They know their father lives in America and that he's very busy with important work. They don't ask for details yet." "But they will," he said softly. "And what will you tell them then?" The question hung between us as the plane cruised through darkness, carrying us toward a confrontation 3 years in the making. I had always known this day might come, had prepared myself for anger, for legal battles, for the full force of Dominic Blackwood's considerable power aimed at claiming what he would see as rightfully his. I hadn't prepared for this, for quiet conversation and painful self-awareness. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "I've been figuring it out as I go." "Like everything else you do," he said, and there was something like admiration in his tone. "You always were better at adaptation than I was. I build systems. You breathe life into them." The flight attendant dimmed the cabin lights, signaling the transition to sleep time. Around us, other passengers reclined their seats and donned eye masks. But sleep was impossible now, with the weight of unspoken truths pressing down. "I have a car waiting at Changi Airport," Dominic said quietly. "A chance to talk properly before you meet them. That's all I'm asking for tonight." I studied him in the dim light, searching for the calculating businessman beneath the earnest request. But all I found was a man who looked older than his 42 years, with new lines around his eyes that spoke of lessons learned through loss. "One conversation," I agreed finally, "and then I decide what happens next." "That's fair." He settled back in his seat, some of the tension leaving his frame. "Thank you." As the plane carried us through the night toward Singapore, toward the twins who had never known their father, I gazed out at the endless stars. 3 years ago, I had walked away from Dominic Blackwood's carefully controlled world to protect my own vision, my own voice. Now, watching him from the corner of my eye, I wondered if perhaps we had both been transformed by the distance between them, if the silence I had maintained had created space for growth neither of us had imagined possible. The memory of our final days together surfaced unbidden. The Blackwood Foundation's annual gala, where Dominic had introduced me not as Rachel Maxwell, award-winning architect and my wife, but simply as my wife, Rachel. The subtle erasure had been the final straw after years of similar diminishments. "I can't do this anymore," I told him that night, standing in our cavernous penthouse overlooking San Francisco Bay. "I'm disappearing inside your life, Dominic. I'm becoming an accessory to your success rather than a person with my own." "That's ridiculous," he'd replied, loosening his tie with practiced efficiency. "You have everything you could possibly want. The foundation gives you unlimited resources for your projects. Projects that only happen with your approval. Projects that become Blackwood initiatives rather than my designs. When was the last time you introduced me as an architect in my own right?" His expression had hardened then, the mask of the ruthless businessman sliding into place. "Is that what this is about? Credit? Recognition? I thought you were above that kind of pettiness, Rachel." "It's about respect," I'd countered, my voice breaking despite my determination to remain calm. "It's about seeing me as your equal, not as an extension of yourself." "I see you exactly as you are," he'd said coldly. "And right now you're being ungrateful and emotional." 2 weeks later, I'd filed for divorce. 2 weeks after that, the papers were signed, with me walking away from the settlement he'd offered in exchange for my silence about the real reasons for our split. And 2 weeks after that, I discovered I was carrying twins. conceived during a brief, desperate night when we'd both reached for each other, perhaps knowing it was the last time. Now, as the plane began its descent into Singapore, I wondered what would have happened if I told him about the pregnancy. Would he have changed? Would he have seen our children as individuals to nurture rather than legacies to shape? Or would they have become like everything else in his orbit, extensions of his vision, reflections of his success? "We're landing," Dominic said softly, interrupting my thoughts. "Are you ready for this?" "No," I admitted. "But it's happening anyway." The Bentley was waiting as promised, a sleek black presence among the airport's taxi line. Dominic's driver, a discreet man I didn't recognize, opened the door without a word. As we settled into the leather interior, the privacy partition raised automatically, leaving us in a cocoon of quiet luxury. "Where are we going?" I asked, suddenly aware of how vulnerable I felt, alone with Dominic in a foreign country, even one I now called home. "Wherever you'd like," he replied. "I've booked a private room at Raffles if you prefer neutral territory. Or we can simply drive while we talk." "Let's drive," I decided. "I need to be home in 2 hours. The twins will be waking from their nap." Dominic nodded, sending a quick text, presumably to the driver. The car pulled smoothly into traffic, heading toward the city center but taking a longer route along the coast. "You've built an impressive life here," he began. "Your firm is doing groundbreaking work. The Sustainable Design Award last year was well-deserved." "Thank you," I said, surprised he'd been tracking my career so closely. "Singapore has been good to us. The twins love it here. The gardens, the mix of cultures, the food." "Tell me about them," he said quietly, his eyes fixed on mine with an intensity that made my heart ache. "Please." I hesitated, then reached for my phone, scrolling to a recent photo. "Alexander is technically 3 minutes older and never lets Amelia forget it. He's thoughtful, observant, loves building things and figuring out how they work." I passed him the phone, watching his face as he saw his son for the first time. "Amelia is fearless. First to try anything new, first to make friends, first to speak her mind. They balance each other perfectly." Dominic stared at the photo, his fingers hovering over the screen as if afraid to touch it. "They're beautiful," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "They have your smile. And your eyes?" I acknowledged. "Your mother's chin, like you said." He swiped to the next photo, the twins at East Coast Park, building an elaborate sandcastle with serious expressions of concentration. "They work well together. They're inseparable," I said. "Even when they fight, they can't stay apart for long." Dominic handed the phone back reluctantly. "Thank you for sharing that." He looked out the window for a moment, gathering himself. "I want to be clear about something, Rachel. I'm not here to disrupt the life you've built. I'm not here with lawyers or demands or threats." "Then why are you here?" I asked, the question that had been burning since I first saw him on the plane. He turned back to me, his expression more open than I'd ever seen it. "Because finding out I had children I never knew existed, made me realize how empty my life has become, how hollow my success feels, and how much damage I must have done to you, for you to believe they needed protection from me." The raw honesty in his voice caught me off guard. This wasn't the calculated charm he deployed in business negotiations or the practiced sincerity he used with the press. This was something I'd glimpsed only in our most private moments, before success and ambition had hardened him. "You would have controlled their lives," I said softly, "just as you tried to control mine. You would have mapped out their futures before they could even speak." "You're right," he admitted, surprising me again. 3 years ago, that's exactly what I would have done. I would have seen them as extensions of my legacy, not as individuals with their own paths to discover. "And now," I challenged, "what's changed?" Dominic was quiet for a long moment, the city lights playing across his face as we drove along the Marina Bay. "I have," he said finally. "Losing you was the first failure I couldn't reframe as a strategic decision. It forced me to look at myself, really look, and I didn't like what I saw." "Dominic, please, let me finish." He took a deep breath. For the past 3 years, I've been working with a therapist, examining patterns I've carried since childhood, understanding how my need for control destroyed what mattered most. His eyes met mine, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. I'm not asking to step back into your life or to disrupt the family you've created. I'm asking for a chance to know my children, on whatever terms you decide are best for them. The Bentley slowed as we approached the iconic Singapore Flyer. The massive observation wheel illuminated against the night sky. In the distance, the 3 towers of Marina Bay Sands stood like sentinels over the city I now called home. How do I know this isn't just another strategy? I asked, voicing my deepest fear. How do I know you won't try to take them from me once you've established a relationship? You don't, he answered honestly. You have no reason to trust me after how I treated you. All I can offer is my word and the time to prove it's genuine. He reached into his jacket, removing a folded document. But I thought you might need more than that. I took the paper cautiously, unfolding it to find a legally binding agreement, already signed by him. It waived any claim to custody rights outside what I explicitly granted, committed substantial financial support without any controlling conditions, and most surprisingly, included a clause preventing him from making any decisions about the children's education, residence, or future without my express consent. You're giving up your legal rights? I asked, stunned by the document in my hands. I'm acknowledging your rights as their mother and primary parent, he corrected gently. I'm removing the threat of legal battles so we can focus on what matters. What's best for Alexander and Amelia? I stared at him, searching for the manipulation, the hidden agenda. But all I saw was a man humbled by his mistakes, asking for a chance at redemption. I need time to think, I said finally. This isn't just about me anymore. I understand. Dominic nodded, respecting the boundary. I've taken a suite at Raffles. I'll stay in Singapore as long as you need to make your decision, but I won't approach you or the children unless you invite me to. The car had completed a full circuit of Marina Bay and was now heading toward the residential district where my home waited, where my children, our children, would soon be waking from their nap, unaware that their world was about to change. One last thing, Dominic said as the Bentley turned onto my street. Whatever you decide, I want you to know that keeping them from me was the right choice. The man I was then wouldn't have been a good father. I hope the man I'm becoming might have that chance. But I'll respect your judgment either way. As the car pulled to a stop outside my building, I saw May through the lobby windows, the twins beside her, clearly having woken early from their nap. Alexander was clutching his favorite blue dinosaur, while Amelia pressed her face against the glass, scanning for my arrival. The moment they spotted me, their faces lit up with identical smiles of pure joy, and in that moment, I knew what I had to do. If you believe that people can truly change when given the right motivation, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales for more stories of transformation and redemption. The most difficult journeys often lead to the most profound growth, and sometimes the bravest thing we can do is give someone the chance to become better than they were. I turned to Dominic, who was watching the twins with an expression of wonder and heartbreak combined. They're waiting for me? I said softly. Of course. He made no move to exit the car, respecting the boundaries I'd set. Take all the time you need. I gathered my carry-on bag, then paused with my hand on the door handle. Come back tomorrow, I heard myself say. For breakfast. 9 a.m. They're always at their best in the morning. Dominic's eyes widened, hope and uncertainty warring in his expression. Are you sure? No, I admitted. But they deserve to know where they come from. And you deserve a chance to show me who you've become. I met his gaze steadily. This isn't forgiveness, Dominic. It's a beginning. What happens next depends entirely on you. I understand, he said quietly. Thank you, Rachel. As I stepped from the car, the humid Singapore air enveloped me like a warm embrace. Through the lobby doors, Amelia had already broken free from May's grasp and was racing toward me, her dark curls bouncing with each step. Alexander followed more cautiously, but with equal excitement shining in his eyes, Dominic's eyes. Mommy! Amelia crashed into my legs, her small arms wrapping around me with surprising strength. "You're home early. We made pictures for you." I knelt down, gathering both children into my arms, breathing in their familiar scent of baby shampoo and the faint sweetness that was uniquely theirs. "I missed you both so much," I whispered, holding them tightly as the Bentley pulled away behind me. "Did you bring us presents?" Alexander asked, practical as always. I laughed, the tension of the past hours dissolving in the simple joy of being with them again. "Yes, I brought presents. And something else too." I brushed a strand of hair from his forehead, so like his father's. "A surprise for tomorrow." "What kind of surprise?" Amelia demanded, bouncing on her toes. "Is it a puppy? A kitten? A baby elephant?" "It's a person," I said carefully. "Someone very important who wants to meet you both." Alexander's brow furrowed in the way it always did when he was processing new information. "Is it Grandma coming to visit again?" "No, not Grandma." I stood, taking each of their hands in mine. "Let's go upstairs, and I'll tell you a story while we unpack my presents." May gave me a questioning look as we entered the lobby, sensing something significant had happened. I nodded slightly, silently promising to explain later. For now, I needed this moment with my children, needed to find the right words to prepare them for the morning. Our apartment occupied the 15th floor of a modern building overlooking a lush park, modest by Dominic standards but perfect for us. Floor-to-ceiling windows filled the space with natural light, while the open layout allowed me to keep an eye on the twins from almost anywhere. I designed the interior myself, blending clean contemporary lines with warm natural materials, creating a home that felt both sophisticated and welcoming. As the children eagerly unpacked the small gifts I'd brought, hand-carved wooden animals from a Jakarta artisan, I watched them with new eyes, seeing Dominic's features reflected in their movements, their expressions. How had I never noticed the way Alexander tilted his head when concentrating, exactly as his father did when reviewing complex data? Or how Amelia's laugh carried the same musical quality as Dominic's rare moments of genuine amusement. "Mommy, you're staring," Amelia observed, breaking into my thoughts. "Is there something on my face?" I smiled, pulling her onto my lap. "No, sweetheart. I'm just happy to be home with you both." I patted the space beside me, inviting Alexander to join us on the sofa. "I want to tell you about the surprise coming tomorrow." "Is it a good surprise or a scary surprise?" Alexander asked cautiously. "It might be a little of both," I answered honestly. "Remember how you sometimes ask me about your daddy, and I tell you he lives far away in America?" They nodded in unison, suddenly attentive. "Well, your daddy has come to Singapore. He wants very much to meet you both." Amelia's eyes widened to perfect circles. "Our real daddy? The one in the picture by your bed?" I nodded, my throat tightening. The only photo I'd kept was from our wedding day, Dominic looking at me with unguarded adoration, before success had changed us both. I'd kept it not for myself, but for them, so they would have at least one image of the man who had helped create them. "Why didn't he come before?" Alexander asked, the practical one as always. "Doesn't he like us?" "Oh, sweetheart." I pulled him closer. "He didn't come before because he didn't know about you. Sometimes grown-ups make complicated decisions, and I decided not to tell your daddy about you when you were born." "Why?" Amelia demanded, her forehead creasing with confusion. How could I explain the complexities of our relationship, the fear that had driven my decision, in terms a 3-year-old could understand? "Because sometimes people need time to learn how to be good parents," I said carefully. "I needed to make sure your daddy was ready to meet you, and now I think he might be." "Is he nice?" Alexander asked, the question breaking my heart with its simplicity. "He can be very nice," I answered truthfully. "He's very smart like both of you. He builds things that help people all over the world. And he has the same eyes as you, Alexander." "Will he stay with us?" Amelia asked, always jumping 3 steps ahead. "No, sweetheart. He has his own place to stay. But he wants to get to know you both, to learn about the amazing little people you are." "Can we show him our room?" Alexander asked, warming to the idea. "And my dinosaur collection?" Of course. I smiled, relieved by their openness. He's coming for breakfast tomorrow, and you can show him anything you'd like. As I tucked them into bed that night, after bath time and stories and the elaborate bedtime ritual we'd established over the years, I found myself lingering in their doorway, watching their peaceful sleeping faces. Tomorrow would change everything, for better or worse. I had spent 3 years protecting them from Dominic's influence, from becoming pawns in his carefully orchestrated world. Now I was voluntarily opening that door, trusting in a transformation I wasn't entirely sure was real. My phone buzzed with a text message. Thank you for this chance. I won't let any of you down. D. Simple words that carried the weight of years of complicated history. I didn't respond, but I didn't delete the message either. Morning came too quickly, sunlight streaming through the blinds I'd forgotten to close. I moved through our usual routine on autopilot, preparing breakfast, laying out clothes, helping with teeth brushing, while my mind raced with second thoughts and contingency plans. You look pretty, Mommy, Amelia observed as I smoothed the front of the simple linen dress I'd chosen. Is it because Daddy's coming? I always try to look nice, I deflected, though I knew I'd taken more care than usual, applying light makeup and styling my hair instead of pulling it into my typical practical ponytail. Are you nervous? Alexander asked perceptively, watching me rearrange the fruit platter for the 3rd time. Your hands are doing the shaky thing. I smiled, caught by my observant son. A little nervous, I admitted. It's been a long time since I've seen your daddy. Don't worry, Amelia said with the supreme confidence of childhood. We'll be super good and make him like us. Oh, sweetheart. I knelt to her level. You don't need to worry about making him like you. He already loves you, even though he's just learning about you. That's what parents do. The doorbell rang precisely at 9, sending my heart into my throat. The twins froze, suddenly shy despite their earlier excitement. Ready? I asked, receiving 2 solemn nods in response. I opened the door to find Dominic standing there, looking simultaneously powerful and vulnerable in casual clothes I'd never seen him wear. Dark jeans and a simple blue button-down that matched Alexander's favorite color. In his hands were 2 carefully wrapped packages and a bouquet of fresh orchids. Good morning, he said. His voice steady, though I could see the emotion he was fighting to control. His eyes moved past me to the 2 small figures half hidden behind my legs. Hello there. For a moment no one moved. Then Amelia, brave as always, stepped forward with her hand extended formally. I'm Amelia Rose Maxwell. I'm 3.5 years old. Are you really our daddy? Dominic carefully knelt to her level, setting the gifts aside to take her tiny hand in his. Yes, I am. My name is Dominic Blackwood. I'm very happy to meet you, Amelia Rose. You have the same eyes as Alexander, she observed, studying his face with unnerving intensity. And the same serious face. A smile broke through Dominic's careful composure. Do I? I was just thinking how much your smile looks like your mother's. Alexander stepped forward then, still partially shielded by my leg but curious enough to emerge. I'm Alexander James Maxwell, he said quietly. Did you bring us presents? Alexander, I admonished gently, but Dominic laughed. A genuine sound I'd rarely heard during our marriage. It's all right, he said, reaching for the packages. Yes, I did bring presents. I wasn't sure what you might like, so I asked the lady at the store to help me choose. He handed each child a beautifully wrapped package. Amelia tore into hers immediately, while Alexander carefully removed the paper in neat sections, just as Dominic himself would have done. A doctor kit, Amelia exclaimed, pulling out a realistic medical playset. Look, Mommy, it has a real stethoscope. And a microscope, Alexander breathed, opening his box to reveal a high-quality children's microscope with prepared slides. A real one. I glanced at Dominic, surprised by the thoughtfulness of the gifts. He shrugged slightly, a hint of uncertainty in his expression. The store owner mentioned Amelia likes to take care of everyone when they're sick, and Alexander is curious about how things work. I hoped these might be appropriate. They're perfect, I said softly, genuinely impressed. The Dominic I'd known would have bought the most expensive toys available, regardless of the children's interests. This careful consideration of who they were as individuals was unexpected. "Would you like to come in?" I stepped back, opening the door wider. "Breakfast is ready, and I'm sure the twins have 1,000 questions for you." "Thank you." Dominic entered, taking in our home with appreciative eyes rather than the critical assessment I'd feared. "This is beautiful, Rachel. The light in this space is extraordinary. Mommy designed everything," Amelia announced proudly, already wearing her toy stethoscope around her neck. "She makes the prettiest buildings in the whole world." "I know she does," Dominic agreed, handing me the orchids. "She always could see possibilities that no one else could imagine." Our eyes met over the flowers, a moment of shared history passing between us. Then Alexander tugged at Dominic's hand, breaking the connection. "Do you want to see my dinosaur collection?" he asked, his initial shyness fading. "I have 23 different species, and I know all their scientific names." "I would love that," Dominic replied with complete sincerity. "Dinosaurs were my favorite when I was your age too." As I watched my son lead his father toward his bedroom, Amelia skipping ahead to show the way, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. The man following my children wasn't the same one who had dismissed my career, who had tried to shape me into an accessory for his success. This man was listening, observing, adapting to their needs rather than imposing his expectations. 6 months passed in a blur of careful steps and gradual revelations. Dominic remained in Singapore, taking a suite at Raffles but spending most of his days with the twins. He rearranged his entire business empire to run remotely, delegating more than I'd ever seen him willing to do during our marriage. Board meetings happened via video conference at odd hours to accommodate his new priority. Being present for breakfast with his children, for playground visits, for bedtime stories. I watched with cautious amazement as he transformed before my eyes. The man who once couldn't sit through a dinner without checking his phone now spent hours on the floor building elaborate block structures with Alexander or having tea parties with Amelia's stuffed animals. His phone forgotten in his pocket. "He's different with them than he was with me," I confided to May one afternoon as we watched Dominic teaching the twins to fly kites at East Coast Park. "More patient, more present. Perhaps because he knows what he lost once," May replied wisely, "and fears losing it again." The most surprising change was in how he treated me. Gone was the controlling executive who had once tried to reshape my career to fit his vision. In his place was a man who asked questions about my current projects with genuine interest, who recommended clients without attempting to direct my work, who spoke of my accomplishments to others with unmistakable pride. The Changi Eco Terminal was Rachel's concept. I overheard him telling a business associate who'd called during one of our now regular family dinners. The integration of natural ventilation with solar collection was entirely her innovation. She's revolutionizing sustainable architecture in Southeast Asia. After he hung up, I stared at him in disbelief. "You've changed," I said simply. "I had to," he replied, meeting my gaze directly. "The man I was lost years with my children. I don't want to be that man anymore." On a warm evening 6 months to the day since that first breakfast, Dominic asked if we could talk after the twins were asleep. We sat on my balcony, the Singapore skyline glittering before us, 2 glasses of wine between us. "I've been offered the chance to establish a major tech innovation center here in Singapore," he said, watching my reaction carefully. "It would mean relocating permanently." My heart skipped a beat. "What about Blackwood Technologies in San Francisco?" "I'd maintain oversight, but my COO has been running day-to-day operations successfully since I've been here. The board supports the move. They see the potential in the Asian market." "And this is what you want?" I asked, studying his face in the soft evening light. "What I want," he said slowly, "is to be where my family is, where my children are growing up, where you are building your legacy." He reached across the table, not quite touching my hand. "I've spent 6 months trying to prove to you that I've changed, that I can be the father they deserve. What I haven't said, what I've been afraid to say, is that I'm still in love with you, Rachel. I never stopped." The confession hung in the air between us, honest and vulnerable in a way the old Dominic could never have been. "Dominic, you don't need to respond," he said quickly. "I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that if there's ever a chance, any chance at all, that we could try again, this time as equals, as partners in the truest sense, I would spend every day making sure you never regretted it." I looked at this man who had once been my husband, who was now my children's devoted father, who had dismantled his carefully constructed life to build something new around what truly mattered. The arrogance had been replaced by humility, the control by respect, the ambition tempered by love. "I'm not the same woman you married," I said finally. "I won't ever be that person again." "I know," he replied, a sad smile touching his lips. "That's not who I'm in love with. I'm in love with the woman who had the courage to leave when I couldn't see her value. The architect who built her own success without my name or connections. The mother who protected our children from my worst instincts." He met my eyes directly. "I'm in love with who you became when you were free of me." In that moment, something shifted, the final piece of a puzzle I hadn't realized we were both solving. The wall I'd built around my heart to protect myself from him began to crumble, not because he was trying to tear it down, but because he was patiently waiting outside, respecting its necessity until I no longer needed it. I reached across the table and took his hand in mine. "We would need to go slowly," I said softly. "Very slowly." Hope bloomed in his eyes, but he contained it carefully. "As slowly as you need. And my career remains mine. My firm, my vision, my name on my work. I wouldn't have it any other way," he said with complete sincerity. "Your success is yours alone. It always should have been. And the twins come first, always. Before business, before ambition, before everything." "Before everything," he agreed, squeezing my hand gently. "They've taught me what truly matters, Rachel." We sat in silence, possibilities settling between us. Not our early passion or the tension of our marriage's end, but something tempered by growth and separate journeys that had somehow led back to each other. "One last condition," I said. "We go to therapy together, to make sure we don't fall back into old patterns." Dominic nodded without hesitation. "I've been seeing someone since shortly after you left. It's been illuminating, painful but necessary. I'd welcome doing that work together." The scent of frangipani drifted from the garden below. Singapore, once my sanctuary, might now become the setting for a second chance I'd never imagined possible. "Mommy!" Alexander appeared in his dinosaur pajamas, clutching his blue stegosaurus. "I had a bad dream." "Come here, sweetheart," I said, opening my arms. "Was it the lost dinosaur again?" He nodded. But this time he found his family. They were looking for him the whole time. I met Dominic's eyes over our son's head, seeing the understanding of the perfect metaphor. "That sounds like a happy ending," Dominic said softly. Alexander reached out one arm toward him. "Daddy, will you come too? Mommy says 2 hugs are better than 1 for bad dreams." Dominic moved carefully, enfolding both of us in his embrace, creating a circle that felt both new and somehow familiar. "Always," he whispered. "Anytime you need me, I'll be there." Over the next 6 months, we rebuilt what had been broken. Dominic moved to an apartment in our building, close enough for daily involvement with the twins but maintaining the separate space we needed. Our therapy sessions excavated old wounds and patterns that had poisoned our first attempt at partnership. "I think I was afraid of your success," Dominic admitted during one session. "If you were as successful as I knew you could be, you wouldn't need me." "And I was afraid of disappearing," I confessed. "Of becoming a footnote in the Dominic Blackwood story rather than the author of my own." We built a new foundation based on mutual respect. Dominic established the Singapore Innovation Center, structured to require only part-time leadership. My firm flourished with a major commission for an eco-friendly tower. Most importantly, we created a family rhythm that put the twins at the center without diminishing our individual paths. Sunday pancakes, monthly exploration days, weekly calls with Dominic's mother, who was delighted to finally know her grandchildren. One Saturday morning a year later, I watched Dominic help the twins make a messy fruit smoothie. Amelia directed from her stool, stethoscope swinging from her neck, while Alexander operated the blender with his father's hands steadying his. "More strawberries," Amelia ordered. "Yes, Dr. Amelia," Dominic replied seriously. "How many would you prescribe?" "7. That's my lucky number." I leaned against the doorframe, amazed by the transformation. The man who once ran boardrooms with ruthless efficiency now covered in banana smudges, following a 4-year-old's directions. He caught me watching, his smile holding none of the calculated charm I'd grown to distrust. Just simple joy at seeing me. That evening, after the twins were asleep, we walked along the waterfront. From his pocket, Dominic produced a small velvet box. My heart stuttered. "Dominic, it's not what you think," he said, revealing not a ring, but a key. "It's to the house on Sentosa, the one you admired last month. The sustainable bamboo design with the living walls? But that was just completed. I bought it for you, for us if you want. But either way, it's in your name." He placed the key in my palm. "You once told me that the perfect home would breathe with its environment. When I saw that house, I heard your voice describing exactly what the architect had created. It's beautiful, but Dominic, I can't accept. You're accepting what you deserve. A home that reflects your vision. I'm not trying to buy your affection. I'm trying to show you that I see you, truly see you, in a way I never did before." I looked at this man who had been my husband, my adversary, and now something new. "Would you move in too?" I asked quietly. "Not just nearby, but with us? As a family?" The hope in his eyes was tempered with restraint. "Only if you're certain. Only if it's what you truly want." I thought of our journey, the romance, the painful dissolution, the unexpected reunion, and the careful rebuilding. "I want to try," I said. "Not to recreate what we had, but to build something better. Something equal." 2 weeks later, we moved into the Sentosa house. On our first night, after the twins were asleep, we stood on the balcony watching moonlight play across the waves. "Are you happy?" he asked, his arm around my waist. "I am," I realized. "Not because everything is perfect, but because everything is real." "I understand what you've given me," he said. "A second chance I didn't deserve but will spend every day earning." "We're both different people now," I said, touching his face. "Maybe we needed to break apart to become the people who could truly fit together." "I love you, Rachel. Not as a possession, but as you, brilliant, stubborn, visionary you." "I love you too," I whispered. "The you that you've become. The father to our children. The partner who sees me clearly." His kiss was tender and patient, carrying our history but not burdened by it. A beginning rather than a reclamation. Later, as we lay together listening to the waves, Dominic asked what I was thinking. "That sometimes the longest way around is the shortest way home," I replied. "We needed every step of this journey to find our way here." His arms tightened around me, secure but never confining. Not the end of the story, just the beginning of a better one. Sometimes the most beautiful structures arise from the ruins of what came before. Not a restoration, but a reimagining. As an architect, I had always known this truth. Now I was living it. This story reminds us that sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most profound growth. If this resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe. I'd love to hear in the comments if you've ever had a difficult choice lead to unexpected healing. Remember, the end of one chapter is often just the beginning of a more beautiful story.